welcome to the Reformation Red Pill Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Haymes. And for those of you who are just now tuning in, we here at the Reformation Red Pill Podcast, well, we are some dark roast, reformed, Kuyperian, theonomic, presuppositional, post-mill, paedo-communion, patriarchal, dragon-slaying, happy warriors. And today, we have a very special episode for you. As usual, today we have the privilege of interviewing the one and only, the incredibly dapper and handsome redeemed Zoomer himself, Mr. Richard Ackerman. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be here. It's always a pleasure to discuss Reformed theology, discuss the things of God with fellow believers. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I'll tell you what we're talking about today. We're doing our Reformation Q&A where our Patreon members have submitted a whole host of questions. They were very excited that I was having you on. For those of you who haven't joined the Patreon, this is my invitation. Come on, join the Patreon. We have tons of fun. And you get tons of great perks. You get access to our Discord community. You get, if you join the Knox tier, which is the one I definitely recommend, you get our Men of Issachar mug. The Men of Issachar, who were they? They were the men who knew what time it was. They knew the signs of the times, and they knew what Israel should do, and that's what we need in our society. So you get that, not mug, I'm sorry, you get that tumbler, and then you get access to 2 different Patreon exclusive shows. The Backstage Reformation Q&A, which is what we'll be doing on this episode, and our new show called Dark Roasted, where we do some debates and discussions on Reformed theology and ministry philosophy with my best friend. I'm trying to convert him to become a Paedo-Baptist. Maybe my dear friend here, Redeemed Zoomer, can help me with that. But so with that, we're going to jump into today's episode of the Reformation Q&A. So we've got a few things we wanted to do. These episodes are meant to be pretty laid back, just kind of talking theology. Before we jump into the idea that that Zoomer and I just had, which is to kind of talk through some of this list of doctrines and ministry philosophies that we gave at the outset, I want to ask you a question first, Zoomer.
Yes.
You ready?
Yeah.
You sure?
Go for it.
Okay. How do you justify staying in a gay-affirming, woman pastor-affirming denomination in light of your conservative convictions?
It depends on why you're staying. If you're staying because you like it.
Wait, pause. Give you a little bit of background as to what I mean by that. Why am I asking you that question? Because people may not know.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a Presbyterian. I'm a member of the PCUSA, which is the mainline historic Presbyterian church in America. There's a problem with the PCUSA. It's that it's full of heretics, not just in a lay level, but in leadership as well. A lot of the leaders of the PCUSA are very liberal to a heretical degree sometimes. Basically, most of the PCUSA affirms women's ordination. The majority of the PCUSA affirms LGBT organization. And a minority, but it's still a concern, a minority of the PCUSA denies the Nicene Creed.
Woo!
So it is very hard being a traditional conservative Presbyterian in the PCUSA. So the question is, how do I justify staying? It depends on why I'm staying. If I'm staying because I like it, well, then that's not good. But if I'm staying to crusade against it and to take back the churches for God's kingdom, that's a good reason, because we are always called to fight for God's kingdom. Now, it was a while before I realized why it was important to stay. When I first learned how liberal the PCUSA was, my mentor, who is a PCUSA mentor in my PCUSA church, and he's solidly conservative, he told me not to leave, even though I wanted to leave. Why? He told me the reason it got this bad is because conservatives over the years kept running away. And over the years, I realized that the reason the left dominates society so much is conservatives always run away, not just in the church, in every area. Conservatives for the past 100 years have had no cultural strategy other than retreat. Retreat from the mainstream schools, from the mainstream universities, from the mainstream cities, from the mainstream institutions, from mainstream science, and worst of all, the mainstream churches. Conservatives in America have been influenced by Baptist fundamentalism and this radical individualism that says you can split off from the mainstream institutions and start your own thing in your basement. But the problem is that you are going to sacrifice your kingdom influence if you do that. So maybe you'll do it once or twice for necessary circumstances, but if conservatives keep doing that in every single situation, we should not be surprised at all that we're in the cultural place that we are today. I think for things to get any better culturally, conservatives have to have the courage of conservatives in the past, of Christians in the past, sorry. We have to develop the courage to leave our comfort zone. We make fun of liberals for being liberal snowflakes, but generally liberals are a lot more comfortable being in conservative environments to take them over than conservatives are being in liberal environments to take them over. I noticed that Christians are the ones who build these great institutions like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
And leftists never build any great things. They just hijack things.
That's right.
Leftism is a virus. It hijacks healthy institutions and turns them into leftism factories.
Yep.
So I ended up realizing the only way for Christians to regain a prominent kingdom influence in society is to retake the institutions that leftists took from us. Not just the mainstream churches, but the mainstream cities and universities.
So I will say that is a harrowing call to action.
Yes.
So, and I get why that is appealing to so many people. And here's my pushback. I would say that, well, it's somewhat pushback. It's more, and then it's also just a question. I think that is a noble goal. And I also think that it is, it's something that perhaps many Christians should pursue. But I must say that if you were a Christian with a family of 3, any kids whatsoever, frankly, the environment, the church environment that you raise your children in is what shapes your kids. We are covenant believers, right? We're believers in covenant, and we think covenantally. And so the church that your children are raised in and discipled in shapes them at a fundamental level. And so if the church that is shaping my children is gay affirming with women pastors up every Sunday or every whatever it is, I cannot see a way in which, or I can't see really any circumstance in which I would, in good conscience, advise someone with children to be a part of a church that is, that is fundamentally opposed to so much of the clear teaching of Scripture. What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's the most common objection to the Reconquista. And it's also the biggest misconception about the Reconquista. We generally, with rare exceptions, we don't advise people to attend liberal congregations.
Okay.
We advise people to attend conservative congregations within liberal denominations, because all these mainline denominations are a big tent. Because generally, with a few exceptions, conservatives weren't forced out of these denominations. They left voluntarily. They ran away. But there's always been some conservatives who haven't left. I know PCUSA pastors. They and their churches are anti-LGBT, anti-abortion, even anti-women's ordination. I'm telling people to attend those churches and keep those churches strong, especially because those churches are the only ones in these liberal denominations that are not dying out. Liberalism kills churches. If the church becomes just like the world, it has nothing to offer the world. That's a John MacArthur quote. He broken clocks right twice a day. So the liberal churches keep dying out. Yeah. So if we just strengthen the conservative churches, eventually they're going to be the only ones left. That is what Reconquista tries to do. We do not want people to strengthen liberal churches. We need those to die out. We are really mainly sending people into moderate and conservative churches because the PCUSA, it's a wide spectrum of beliefs. I would say if you want to participate in this movement and you have a family and kids, stick to the solidly conservative churches. If you're single, like I am for now, that's going to change very, very soon, then
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Then feel free to attend a moderate congregation and try to push it in the right direction. Because in these dying out boomer churches, they are so desperate for leadership positions. It is so easy to gain leadership in a old boomer mainline church. It is so easy. When I was 15, I was already made one of the biggest Sunday school teachers. My father became an elder within just a couple years of attending. So if you have kids, stick to the conservative ones. If you do not have people you need to shepherd in your own life, feel free to join a moderate one. Don't join the liberal ones under any circumstances. We have very clear directions for how to do Reconquista on OperationReconquista.com. It's an alliance of conservative Christians in all the major mainline Protestant denominations.
Are you looking for unique, high-quality items for your home? Well, look no further than Handcrafted by MPD, where faith and craftsmanship come together to create beautiful, meaningful pieces for your home. Handcrafted by MPD offers a range of handmade products, including kitchen items for all your sourdough bread-making needs. humidors for preserving those precious stogies, and furniture to fill your home to create lasting memories. Every piece is made by a single craftsman using locally sourced materials, ensuring that each item is unique and special. These are not mass-produced products, but heirloom quality pieces that you can pass down through generations, reflecting the values of faith, family, and legacy. So Michael was kind enough to send me some of his products, and I gotta say, my favorite is this whiskey glass ashtray cigar holder combo. That and this cocktail smoker. So, Red Pill Reformers, let's build the parallel economy together. Let's keep the money in the covenant. You guys buy products from an awesome, faithful Christian business, and in turn, they want to continue sponsoring this podcast and keep the lights on. Everybody wins. So, visit handcraftedbympd.com today and curate your home with pieces that honor God and build a lasting legacy. Are you desiring to change your financial trajectory and build multi-generational wealth for your children and grandchildren? Our sponsor, Private Family Banking, invites you to join a growing number of like-minded individuals, families, and entrepreneurs who are working together to form a unique part of the parallel economy. Are you concerned about preserving your retirement savings tucked away in your 401k? With personal income tax rates likely to be much higher after 2026, now may be the best time to borrow or withdraw from your 401k savings to fund your privatized banking system. For many families, this may be a powerful wealth preservation hack, even with a 10% early withdrawal penalty. For others, a tax-free and penalty-free 401k or 403b rollover may be a great option. With Private Family Banking, you will learn how to establish a privatized banking system that will increase the value of the money and savings that you already have flowing through your life. Join this growing community today as part of putting post-mill talk into post-mill action by contacting a Private Family Banking partner at banking@privatefamilybanking.com. Also, see the show notes below to schedule a discovery call and get a free copy of the ebook entitled Protect Your Money Now: How to Build Multi-Generational Wealth Outside of Wall Street and Avoid the Coming Banking Meltdown. That is great. Honestly, that's really exciting. That's something I can get behind. I think my only caution would be advising somebody to join. My caution would be for the moderate church, because if you're joining a church with hopes of converting it, that's probably too strong a word. It's kind of like that woman dating the man just praying that he'll change. You know, I worry about that, and I guess it just depends on how moderate you're talking, because I think, biblically speaking, you could be getting into some dangerous territory where you're joining a church with the intent to sow division. You could be that. I'm not saying it is that, but I'm saying that's a danger in that moderate church. The vision for strengthening the conservative churches in the PCUSA, I think I can just fully get behind that, like full-throated. I think you've just won me over. I think that's a great plan. What would you say about that caution to the person who's going in intending to change a moderate church?
Right. So now, just to give you the numbers, the PCUSA has 8,000 churches, and only 5% of the churches are solidly conservative. That is still 400 conservative PCUSA churches.
Yeah.
That's more than twice the size of the entire OPC. I think it has about 1,000, maybe between 1,000 and 2,000 moderate purple churches. So it's a very good question. I understand the concern of joining a church for the sake of changing it. But I also think that concern is rooted in this American assumption that you have this restaurant menu of options of different types of churches to attend. For the vast majority of Christians in human history, there was one denomination you could attend. If you were in England, you would attend the Church of England church that was closest to you. If you were in Italy, you would attend the Roman Catholic Church. If you were in Russia, you would attend the Eastern Orthodox Church. As Protestants, we affirm the priesthood of all believers. Every believer has an evangelical mandate from God to spread the gospel. And who are we to say that that's only outside the church? We need to spread the gospel in the church. Regardless of how good our church is, all of us need to be evangelists even within our own churches. It's a very American idea to expect the congregation you join to be a perfect choice, to have this menu of different types of churches that you can attend, and you're not going to be satisfied until you find the perfect one. All of us need to be priests, even in our own churches.
Yeah, I agree. That is a uniquely modern Western phenomenon. It's that consumeristic, individualistic understanding of the church, um, rather than understanding that you are a body that is covenanting together. And you're not going to a church to get the Christian professionals to offer up their spiritual goods and services for you to consume, right? These are communities of Christ followers who are meant to bring their gifts to the table, right? For the advancement of God's kingdom and the proclamation of the gospel, and ultimately so that we could see the Lord's Prayer come into fruition, that his kingdom would come and his will would be done here on earth as it is in heaven. I believe that the church is the engine that drives that. And so we don't come thinking, how can I get something out of this? We should be going, how can I offer something? So that is a distinction that's really important. I think going into a church, knowing that I have something to offer, I have something to bring to the table, I think that's a good thing. And I think, honestly, even going along with your point, I've got some friends who are a part of churches, even Reformed Baptist churches, that they want to see go more in the direction of confessionally reformed and kind of bring it into this direction. What would you say? What would you say to my Presbyterian friend, who the most faithful church he can find in the area is a light roast Reformed, Calvinistic, but that's it as far as the Calvinism goes, Baptist church, and they're hoping to take that in a more Reformed direction. What would you advise them in that same direction?
Maybe not, because I think there's a difference between a Reconquista and just a Conquista.
Okay.
I think that the idea of Reconquista is making something return to what it was founded on, making something return to its roots. I don't think people should stay in like a prosperity gospel megachurch to try and make that more Christian, because that was never Christian to begin with.
I see.
I think it's a waste of time and energy to try and enter something and try to turn it into something it never was. Reconquista is just about getting these mainline denominations to actually preach the beliefs they still confess on paper. So I'm not saying Reformed Baptist churches are like those prosperity gospel megachurches, but if there's no confessional Presbyterian churches near you, and you want to try and help there be a confessional Presbyterian church near you, the best option I would say is to join your local mainline Presbyterian church, assuming you don't have assuming it's not too bad and assuming you don't have family and kids that you need a shepherd. I'd say your best bet would be to join that and to try and push that more towards its roots, rather than joining a Baptist church and try to make it stop being Baptist. No, if they were founded as a Baptist church, let them be a Baptist church. But I wouldn't say you should join like a Unitarian Universalist church and try to make that conservative either.
Yeah.
So the Reconquista philosophy is really just about making things return to their roots.
I like that. So do you have any success stories? I want to hear your greatest so far, any success stories, some fruit of the Reconquista movement that would indicate that, okay, this is a direction that there is some hope.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of in cases of churches going from liberal to conservative and denominations going from liberal to conservative that weren't necessarily connected to our movement, just stories that show it's possible.
I see.
A lot of the pastors that are in the Reconquista movement took over liberal churches and made them conservative, and this wouldn't have been possible if they didn't go through seminary and pursue ordination in a mainline church. There's also stories of denominations like the Christian Reformed Church. They were drifting left. They had women pastors and they were about to affirm same-sex marriage. Some of the churches in their denomination were already doing it, but they turned the ship around and now they're drifting right. The LCMS Lutheran Church and the Southern Baptist Church both almost had the same liberal takeover that most mainlines did, but they resisted it. And the benefits are massive. In the South, you can find a confessional, traditional, historic Baptist church in every town. In the upper Midwest, you can find a confessional, historic Lutheran church in every single town. That's the benefits of having a mainline church that has still been faithful to the gospel. The Latvian Lutheran Church used to have women's ordination. A lot of people think by the time a church has women's ordination, it's done for, you have to leave. But no, they got a based archbishop who reversed the practice of women's ordination, and now the Latvian State Lutheran Church is conservative enough to be in communion with the LCMS. But I know you asked for specific Reconquista-related success stories. The Reconquista is only a year old. It's ridiculous to demand that we have any actual success stories, except we kind of do. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but this year's General Assembly had an overture that was supposed to kick out all the conservatives. There was this overture from Olympia Presbytery that was going to mandate that churches affirm gay marriage. And this overture, it was inevitable that it passed. But luckily, the leader of our Reconquista nonprofit that started last year, David Yancey, he's the leader of the Presbyterian PCUSA Reconquista. He attended General Assembly, and our Reconquista movement had been emailing churches for the past year. He put together a coalition of people at General Assembly to amend the overture so that it would not require conservative pastors to abide by it.
Wow.
The entire PCUSA was saved by a couple Discord nerds that just chose to not run away and chose to try and make a difference in the denomination. And I'm not taking credit. I wasn't at the General Assembly. He was. I just I might have facilitated some of the conversations, but that's it.
That's powerful, man. That's exciting.
Thank you.
Well, let's push you a little bit further on this. On Twitter, you recently said that we should let the libs win the presidency to punish Republicans for their anti-Christian platform.
I was kind of being sarcastic, but at the same time, I was trying to say that we need to stop trying to pretend that conservatism in America is ever going to win. That's what I think. My point in saying that, I was being sarcastic, but my point in saying that was a lot of people think that Christians are going to win just because conservatives might win. But all conservatives ever do in America is just go liberal, but always stay 10 years behind the progressives.
Yeah. That
was my main point.
Dabney has a quote that is, it says, the American conservatism is the shadow that follows the beast as it always moves forward to perdition. That's basically what American conservatism has become.
So my point, like what I was proposing, and this is an example of how, I'm not the most qualified person to lead anything because people take what I say too seriously. But my point was that if Christians are no longer loyal to a single political party, if Christians punish the Republicans one year around by just not voting, staying home, Republicans might be like, oh, dang it, we need to maybe not throw Christians under the bus next time. Maybe let's change our platform. Because if the Republicans can take the Christian vote for granted, if the Christians are always going to vote for the Republicans because they're the lesser of two evils, Republicans are not going to care about trying to win the Christian vote. They're going to keep throwing us under the bus. So I was proposing the idea that maybe it might be worth it to punish the Republicans now for the sake of a long-term victory. But politics isn't my specialty. What I really focus on is theology, because politics is downstream from culture and culture is downstream from theology. If Republicans win the majority of state legislatures, if Trump wins the election and Republicans win the House of Representatives and the Senate, things aren't going to get better. Why? Because that happened in 2016. And during the Trump presidency, the left gained more ground than it ever did in human history. Why? They own the universities. The institutions matter more than the government. I think Christians need to stop caring about government for a while.
Well, it's not only the universities, it's lower education. It's lower education and higher education.
Yeah. I think we need to retake the mainstream universities and the mainline churches and the media before we start wasting money on useless Republican candidates who will throw us under the bus. That's the point of what I was trying to say. I think retaking the institutions is more important than politics. And how do I know this? Around the 1990s, the Republicans spent their money on politicians and winning elections. Republicans got good at winning elections. Meanwhile, Democrats spent their money on the institutions.
Culture.
The Frankfurt School and cultural Marxism did a long march through the institutions, and it was massively successful.
Oh, yeah.
We need to do the same thing.
Yep.
The left proved that they want. I used to be a leftist. That's part of my shtick. And in some ways, I still have a leftist approach to culture war. I think we need to subvert the institutions, just like the Frankfurt School cultural Marxists did. We need to use the tactics of the left against them. That's what I think.
Well, that answers my question, because you started going before I finished the question, because the question was going to be, why don't you apply the same logic of politics that you just put forward to your Reconquista movement? But that answers the question.
Yeah, I just think cultural institutions, powerful elite institutions. I'm not talking about things we start in our basement. I'm talking about established elite institutions are more important than the government.
Yes, I agree 100%. And Christians have been notoriously bad at building and maintaining institutions. I think a lot of that has to do with eschatology, which we can debate at some other point. But we're both many degrees removed from the eschatology that I think has the most impact on our defeatist mentality, which is the premillennial dispensational eschatology that says we lose down here.
That's basically what caused it. The fundamentalist movement is what led to retreatism. I still see aspects of retreatism in postmillennialism, though, even though postmillennialism sounds the least retreatist, but I think sometimes it still is retreatist in a different way.
Well, how so?
So if I know I'm going to pass a math test, I'm not going to study. If I know I'm going to fail a math test, I'm not going to study. If I don't know whether I'm going to pass or fail, then I'm going to study. So I've heard a lot of people justify splitting off from a mainstream university or church on the grounds of optimism, on the grounds that, oh yeah, this new thing I build will grow into something that will replace the old thing. Like, I've heard a lot of people saying, like, and this is where I might get a little critical of the CREC, which I know that is okay on this show. Yeah. So a lot of people say, oh, the CREC is eventually going to get cathedrals. The CREC advertises itself as cathedral Calvinism. In reality, it has far fewer, pretty buildings than the OPC or the Southern Baptist Church, whether you're talking about raw numbers or percentages. Either way, it has far less because they split off from the mainstream institutions. So and they often justify that with postmillennialism. They think that, oh, well, God has promised that the church will succeed, that God's promised that we'll win down here. So yeah, we can split off now because we know that if we're just faithful for a long enough time, we'll eventually get all this material stuff back. I'm amillennial. I don't think we are promised that. God promises us spiritual salvation. God does not promise us material success. He also doesn't promise us material failure. I think it really depends on what we do. I think it depends on how well we play chess.
I think the difference there, I think, you could draw the same parallel to election. You could say, we both believe in election, and so why share the gospel? Well, because we're commanded to. And so I can see how someone could come to that conclusion. I've never heard anyone justify kind of retreating from the mainline denominations. And I get it. Your whole shtick is Reconquista, so taking back the denomination. So I understand that. But I think the postmillennial view, I don't see it necessitating like a kind of retreatism from the mainline denominations. Rather, I would actually see the opposite. That postmillennialism is more optimistic for the Reconquista program itself, saying that there will be a Reconquista of some sort, whether that comes from outside the mainline denominations themselves or within, or a mixture of the two and a coming together. Who knows? But if you know you're fighting a losing battle, it affects the way that you engage that battle. And so how would you say you're not premillennial dispensational, you're amil? We're getting into this is fun. We'll just go around. We're just going to go with whatever comes up on this episode.
Yeah.
How would you say that your amillennialism flesh out your accusation against postmillennialism a little bit more, sure. Saying that you think it can bring some retreatism for me.
Right. So you said that Reconquista will eventually happen one way or another. If that is your starting point, then you can justify splitting off for now. If you see all these beautiful institutions that were created by Christians, you see the glory of God inscribed in stained glass windows in downtown Manhattan, in First Presbyterian Church Manhattan, things Christian men built with their own hands. You see the names of faithful Christian men in mainline Protestant cemeteries. And then you see that there's pride flags covering that by recent leftist hijacks of that. If you have this assumption that, oh yeah, we're going to get that back eventually, it may take several hundred years, but we're eventually going to get it back because we're going to win down here. Then you can be like, okay, well, if we're eventually going to get that back, then I can focus on what are my priorities right now? My priority right now doesn't need to be recapturing all the institutions. It's just raising a family and having kids. And I want to do that in a safe environment, even if it doesn't have as much institutional influence. Let me go to some conservative offshoot denomination to do that.
Well, I mean, what I would say is that not so, yeah, that could result in abandoning institutions, but it also results in building institutions. So I can see what you're saying. There is some kind of leaving behind some of these captured institutions, but it is, it's the postmillennialists right now who are attempting at building a parallel economy.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's the problem. I think post-millennials are too optimistic about their ability to build institutions right now. Post-millennials think that all institutions founded by Christians with good intentions are created equal. I've had so many post-millennials tell me like, oh yeah, Doug Wilson's new St. Andrews College, it's eventually going to be the next Harvard. Well, we don't know that. Right now, it's not very accredited. Of course, I pray for it. I hope it turns into something great. But the amillennial understands that we still are fighting a war. We still are fighting a war in which objectively both sides have a lot of have equal strength. It could very well be that the new institutions we start don't have any influence. And right now, the new institutions that conservatives build, whether they're post-mill or not, just new conservative institutions, are kind of a joke compared to the old ones that people built. I think it's because society, back when the country was more Christian, society just had more resources and was more spiritually healthy, had more of a capacity to build strong institutions. I don't think we have the capacity to build strong institutions right now. It takes centuries to build a strong institution, only a generation to take them over, sorry. It took centuries to build up the mainline Protestant denominations. It took the left a generation to hijack them. And they were building them back when they were in a Christian society with Christian resources at their disposal everywhere. We're trying to do it in negative world, as Aaron Red says. We're trying to do it in a society that is hostile to us. I am a pessimist about our ability to build institutions that come anywhere even near the previous ones of Christendom right now.
Oh, I am too. Well, that's the whole thing about time too. I am under no illusion that we are going to build Harvard in my lifetime. But the thing is if I believe as a post-millennial, I still believe we're in the early church. Whenever the promise was to 1,000 generations, that equals out to be about 40,000 years. I think we've got a long way to go. Obviously, I don't take that totally literally, but I do think whenever the promise being to 1,000 generations,
okay,
we could. Sure. So we've got plenty of time, and just as Christendom was built after the destruction of the Roman Empire, it rose out of the ashes of the Roman Empire. So too can a new Christendom be built. If this is the case, we don't know. I don't know which way we're going to go, what direction we're going to go. But if it is the case that the American Empire falls like the Roman Empire, I think that we will build new Christendom out of the ashes of that. Are you a Christian struggling to find companies that align with your values and beliefs? Squirrelly Joe's Coffee has you covered for all of your coffee needs. All of their coffee is hand-selected and roasted fresh every day by a family of fellow believers. Try them out and you'll savor exceptional coffee while knowing that your investment supports a company committed to following God's teachings and upholding truth and righteousness, ensuring that your hard-earned money contributes to the growth of God's kingdom. Stop giving your hard-earned dollars to pagans who support evil. Now, we have a fantastic offer for all of our Reformation Red Pill listeners. Your first bag of coffee is free. Free coffee. All you have to do is cover the shipping. So, head on over to squirrellyjoes.com/red pill to claim your free bag of coffee today. If you are anything like me, you would love to start reading the Puritans, you just don't know where to begin. Reformation Heritage Books has the solution. Their collection, Puritan Treasures for Today, makes the riches of these godly writers of old accessible for the modern reader. With updated language and helpful introductions, these classic works from John Owen, Jeremiah Burroughs, and more are the perfect starting point for the curious reader. We need the wisdom of the Puritans for the ongoing work of Reformation today. Learn more about the Puritan Treasures for Today at heritagebooks.org/Puritan Treasures. The link will be in the show notes below.
True, but even from a post-millennial framework, there is no promise that any of our efforts right now are eventually going to grow into new Christendom.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's theoretically possible that there could be World War III, all of North America gets nuked, we all die, so do all of our descendants, and then new Christendom starts in an island off the shore of Mozambique, and that takes over the whole world.
Sure.
That is possible under the post-millennial framework. So I guess if you're that type of post-millennial, then you can agree with me. But under that framework, I still think the best choice for us right here, right now, given what we know right now, is to take over the institutions that are already strong, like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, rather than starting new ones with no promise and no indication that they're ever going to grow into something parallel to that.
Well, I think the way I see it, that does make sense. But I think that postmillennialism doesn't necessitate the retreat away from your Reconquista project.
I guess you're right. I don't think it necessitates that. I'm not sure if I said it necessitates that. I think it sometimes leads to it.
Okay, yeah. I could see that sometimes leading to it, but I could also see it being fuel for the fire for the actual Reconquista itself, right?
There are some post-millennial Reconquistadors. Do you know Bruce Gore?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's precept, post-millennial, all that. He's basically CREC on every doctrinal point, except he's a teacher in the PCUSA and has been for like 50 years.
Yeah.
So Bruce Gore is my favorite. I think Bruce Gore is the best Presbyterian YouTuber. He's brilliant. He's brilliant when it comes to church history. So I don't think postmillennialism necessitates retreatism. I just think that a lot of what I see within like Christian Reconstructionism is this over-optimism about the ability to build new things, which demotivates people to retake the old things.
I could see that.
You get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying?
I can see that.
No,
I could see that. I'll have to think on that. Yeah. I hadn't done any really study or thinking through I'd heard you talk about the Reconquista Project, but I hadn't heard you yourself articulate it. I heard some of the objections, but I will say you do a good job of articulating it, and it's something that I'll think about. I wouldn't have the same degree of confidence that you do in leading people away from building institutions. I think you have a degree of confidence right now, and perhaps unfounded degree of confidence, that we are not headed for a cataclysmic problem, a kind of a potentially world-shaping kind of changes within the next generation or two. I see us headed for a cliff, and I think that Christians investing right now in building. Now, I'm not going to say at the expense of potentially retaking, although necessarily if someone's putting all their effort into building, they're not going to be putting their effort into retaking. But I would say that there is a lot of value in not putting all your eggs in one basket and saying we're going to. I would advise probably equally, if you want to take this, if you want to go in this Reconquista direction, saying we're going to attempt at retaking these institutions. I believe that's just the way you've articulated it. That's a very noble goal, and in fact, perhaps an achievable goal. I don't know. But I would also say that it is perhaps equally important for Christians to be planning and building without the expectation that we're going to retake those institutions. They might be too far gone.
Okay.
And if
that's fair.
And if they're too far gone, your grandchildren will be thanking Doug Wilson for building New St. Andrews. If they're too far gone and we have a cataclysmic kind of situation where, Christians are excised from society, or we have a civilizational breakdown, who knows what's going to happen. But if Christians have been putting in the work to build a parallel economy, build parallel institutions, while not, reaching the grandeur of Christendom, perhaps yet, give it maybe a few 100 years, 1,000 years, who knows? But I think that there is a lot to be said for building alongside and not just choosing one path or the other. Sure.
Now, this is the way you articulate that. You'll get no argument from me. I can't really argue with that. Sometimes, however, the way people articulate that is, I think they abuse presuppositionalism. Now, I'm not criticizing presuppositionalism as a whole. I'm still not precept, but I understand that not all precepts would argue like this.
Wait, when you say you're not precept, what do you mean?
I just affirm more of a classical, Scotist way of approaching truth, where we argue first for God in a general sense, like as in the divine essence, and then we reason from there to Christianity.
Because I think there's a distinction between like hyper precept guys and just understanding the apologetic value that Van Til, the presuppositionalism brings to the table.
Sure. I'll just say, here's how I've seen precept play out in a way I think is not good.
Okay.
Now, based on what you've said, I don't think you have this perspective, but a lot of people have acted like the brand new institutions conservatives have made, like New St. Andrews, is just as good as Harvard. And I'll be like, what are you talking about? No, of course it's not. And they'll be like, oh, by what standard can you say it's not as good?
Okay, yeah, I could see that being annoying.
And they'll be like, oh, well, New St. Andrews is a lot more biblical, so how is it not better than Harvard? And I'm like, you have to distinguish between the, moral quality of an institution and the objective quality of an institution, or like the academic quality. And they'll be like, oh, are you using like pagan standards to determine the academic quality of an institution?
So I think that's an example of taking presuppositionalism too far.
So I preface that by saying I know you're probably not gonna argue like this.
Sure. Well, okay, wait. Yeah. Before we continue, let me think about this, because we could just go back and forth for a long time. So let me see, what are we looking at right now? Hour 30. We'll give our YouTube audience just a little bit longer, and then I think I want to because we've kind of started addressing like that, my opening list of doctrines and ministry philosophies. Perhaps actually, if you want to, we'll continue on in the Discord. Actually, we'll get into the Kuyperian. That's the one you said you agreed on, right?
Yes, Kuyperianism.
Okay. We'll get into some of the theonomic presuppositional post-mill. We've already talked some post-mill. We haven't really debated or discussed the actual like exegetical positions as much as some of the consequences of them. But still, it's a helpful discussion to have. Paedo Communion, Patriarchal, Dragon Slaying, Happy Warriors. We're going to talk about those as well as the questions from our Patreon subscribers in the Discord, in the Patreon exclusive part. So if you want to listen to that, if you want to catch that, come join our Patreon community. $10 a month gets you this Zwingli tier. You get access to the Reformation Q&As along with our Discord and a lot of really other fun stuff. So with that, we're going to leave that right there for you guys. Also, like, share, all that good stuff. And I pray that this discussion has been a blessing to you and that all the resources that we create, my hope and prayer is that they would be a resource for you to be better equipped to build, defend, and expand the kingdom of our Lord, Jesus Christ. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next episode.